Well, welcome everyone. This is season 2 of Spiritual Tech Talks 2.0. And I still don't know why it shouldn't be 3.0 because it's the second season, but they tell me it's still 2.0. So good morning, good night, good day, good evening, where you are on the planet. And we have a really exciting show, interesting show. We have Dr. Thornton Streeter with us, who is an expert in biofield and subtle energy and stuff that we've been dealing with at iAwake for a long time. To tell you the truth, I really don't understand what it is. So I'm looking to be informed and inspired. And Thornton, would you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you merged into what you're doing, and then what you're doing?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's just a real pleasure. I've been chasing you guys the last couple of years, really excited by the program that you're doing, and I'm thrilled to be here. So, my bio is biofield stuff. I in my early 20s got interested in this particular field. It was a strange event, a ceremony, in fact, that had been organized by, I think we'll call them the, Hindu university community. And they invited a number of professors from universities like Berkeley to sit in on this yagna ceremony in South India. And to cut a very long story short, there was a priest who had learnt these mantras, 27 days of mantras, off by heart. There's only a couple of them that go to the lengths to learn this particular ceremony. And for a certain number of days, he's supposed to leave his body. So they had these scientists, one of them was a lady from Great Britain called Rosemary Steele, and she was taking very rudimentary, subtle energy images of this guy's hands. And what was fascinating, I feel blessed to have been there, is for the exact 5 days when he was supposed to leave his body, there was no signature of his subtle body. So all the other days, he'd had a really bright field around every finger, and you could call him a healthy, it's called electrographic process, this Kirlian effect process. But it stands the test of time, and he wasn't there for 5 days, exactly in line with the ceremony. So I was blown away by that. I mean, I was already there for being interested in the field, but this lady kind of tuned my specific interest, and I actually chased an Indian institute to let me join them because I couldn't afford to do it in America. And so after that ceremony, I quickly came back here and sort of did the background stuff to understand, the anatomy and physiology of the biofield, and also why it isn't perhaps being correctly represented. If you look at plant biology, you see the flowers and the buds on the same page, but in human biology there's been a kind of divorce. I think it happened when the church and the state separated, but you get the chakras and the delicate subtle energy components in religious or spiritual texts. Right. And the glands and the physical system is left in Gray's Anatomy. And we're all taught that the other is either a witch or a pseudoscientist or short-sighted or stuck in a paradigm or whatever it is. But the real issue is, how can we integrate all this important information? I mean, my job was easy when some Italian anatomists found a new tendon in the knee a few years ago. And I remember saying, in lectures that, we think the body, 2.0 is a closed book, but actually, we're finding tendons. And then now, just a few weeks ago, they found a new organ in the human body, and I think it's all wide open. And, I've got a slideshow on the meridian system on SlideShare, and, 17,000 people have seen it in the last few months because, being able to show that the meridians are real, show how the chakras work, you know, it's given a lot of confidence to all the different modalities that work with subtle energy, and that's the entire A to Z of healing modalities. They all work with the bioplasmic component of the human body.
Yeah, you know, and I've been a martial artist. I've been a Qigong practitioner. I'm a Reiki master, and I've had experiences of this stuff. And of course, I've been doing iAwake, you know, meditations for 11 years now, like on a daily basis. And there's a lot of biofield that is programmed into our audio tracks, and I feel the effects. And I've seen this thing. I have no idea what it is. I don't know why when I, you know, subtly touch people and start this Reiki thing that healing happened. And you know, I know Qigong saved my life when I was really, really depressed and going through some really, but I don't know what it is. So is this something like gravity, strong fields, all of these different forces? We just use them and know how to work with them, but it's still a mystery ultimately.
Well, I mean, there's some things you've got to kind of put in the preface to this research. You know, the human eye is a very limited tool, and yet scientists insist that we've got to observe things with it. We've considered that issue and invented a whole load of devices which allow us to peer into invisible parts of the spectrum, you know, from the sonograph all the way up to X-ray. And the type of technology that we work with actually just is in the visible spectrum, and that's why clairvoyant and clear seeing from the French is a capacity that we all have. But just because we've looked and focused on things in the last few generations, you know, pencils, door handles and pavements will do it, we don't see anymore, and so we miss out on, I mean, put it this way, if I have, you know, let's start with our audience, don't look at me. Don't look at me. Look at me as if I'm a 3D poster. And you're looking for this dolphin or this Om to emerge. So you're now not focusing on the person opposite you or in the room. You're just... And everybody can see a very white glow around people's heads. And if you practice that when the sun's gone down around trees, you'll realize how advanced different students' sight is naturally. But, you know, there are issues. If we drink fluoride in our water, it calcifies the pineal gland, and that's the device that we need to... Clairvoyance is when we create a lens in our biofield, you know, so that I can project through this lens and see. But if that gland is crusted with fluoride, it's a big issue. So, you know, there are fundamental things that we need to address before, you know, anyone has this experience. But of course, as a scientist working in a, you know, observed environment, we've gathered a number of different tools together which measure subtle energy. Can I stick my motley face in your front screen?
Oh, please do, yeah.
Because I think it might be a good idea. I mean, the pictures do speak 1,000 words, don't they? And whilst we've got a crisp line, I feel empowered to share the screen with you. In terms of my intro and where are my roots in this field, I explained that 30 years ago I was at this incredible ceremony, and it led me to what I do now, which is represent various different organizations, including the UN or an NGO at the UN, to you know, put forward integrative approaches to healthcare that are scientifically investigated by open-minded scientists. You know, that's effectively what we're doing. And for 18 odd years, we were delighted to be in a partnership with the MIT, which is the image of the building actually where we were in Pune for many years. And the upper images of the building that I'm sitting in right now, where, you know, is a building we own ourselves, and, you know, our library and all our other facilities are here. But answering your original question, you know, it was seeing things like this in museums, you know, where clearly anatomical features of biofields that certain people could see were shown by artists of the day in all kinds of different mediums, from whatever, you know, denomination, let's call it, and they have very distinct anatomical features, which is significant because these all become maps, and especially when you look in cultures where they really focus on, you know, this aspect, and there isn't a separation. The information is very rich. Where we see the petals of the chakras, for example, you know, the rishis were letting us know that each of these transponders were responsible for a certain wavelength. 4 petals denotes a slow wavelength, and as they increase up the chakra system, the frequency increases. So each chakra is responsible for a little range within the spectrum that a human wave range exists. And they communicated that very clearly. Looking at it from a modern perspective, you know, as above, so below, does the human body have an atmosphere? And, you know, we're saying it does. It's measurable with a number of different devices, many of which are already in the common, you know, awareness, like, you know, MRI and SQUID. The SQUID is a technology which can measure magnetic fields, and HeartMath and institutes like that is showing that the heart has an incredible powerful field. We're also aided by art from the likes of Alex Gray, who seamlessly go from this physical to energetic body. And it's a bit like that wave particle experiment. You know, you can do wave medicine, energy medicine, healing with chakras and meridians, or you can do particle medicine, which is biochemistry, and our reality blinks between the two. So take your pick. You know, biochemical medicine seems to have side effects and issues that perhaps in the long term mean it'll be replaced. Energy medicine, wave medicine is brilliant because just at the moment we can be touched by a vibration, and ideally without any side effects at all. And the more we know about these things, the more brilliant we realize they are. So, you know, long term, picture in the middle is the picture of the human body and being that we'll be familiar with.
Well, yeah, Thornton, I've often said that if there was a pill that was getting the effects of, you know, what iAwake is doing for the people that are using it, they would be, a big pharma would be pumping, you know, billions of dollars into this thing because it's a chemical thing, you know, you ingest.
Well, I don't think we even need to separate health from family, from spiritual well-being as a kind of a business. I think health is just part of the thing we claim, you know, as our weekly family right, and we then go and work and we then go and play. But health is something that we need to bring into the home so that it can become a real sanctuary rather than a sort of dwelling, you know, zapped by EMFs and, you know, neighbors who don't understand the energy of a community. But anyhow, I mean, I've come to all this, as I mentioned, through this type of Keelian photography, and there is a Keelian image there on the right-hand side at the bottom. That's an orange.
Wow.
But we're also seeing the orange top left, and we're also seeing the orange how a modern medic will see it with an MRI and a CT. So the component that I'm saying that's important is peer into the body, but at what price? There are 300 million girls missing from the demographics of the world because we've been using sonographs to sex infants, and, you know, when they turn out to be girls for no other reason. We've got 30 years of history which shows, you know, we're actually committing gendercide because, as I said, 300 million girls are being aren't there anymore. At what price do we see into the body? That's more people than have died in any war. It balances out demographics slightly. But, you know, if I'm an orange tree standing there, you know, sucking the living daylights out of the sun, like a mother, I want to protect my seeds and give them the best chance. So I envelope them in this ball of light. And, you know, Adam and Eve worked it out that it was worth and sensible to eat. You know, the apple, is a very delicate thing, and the subtle energy of it is fragile. So if we sort of wade into modern food preparation and see on the right what a microwave oven does to the subtle energy of an apple, or a mobile phone might do to your subtle energy, we become a little bit more open to, boosting our energies, I think, is the best thing to do, enhancing our energies so these types of things don't affect us. And the electromagnetic spectrum, I've spoken about ultrasound, I've spoken about X-ray technology, which allows us to peer into the body. But, CT scan, executive health checkup is several hundred X-rays. And I think in a modern environment, we can look beyond that sort of business of, especially the ivory towers that happen within clinical environments where, once the radiologists are in there, there's no room for any type of ologists. Medical thermal imaging is an amazing tool, not available in most hospitals because radiologists don't like it, because it's not radiology. It's boring, silly, and we need to move beyond that. The technology that we've developed operates within the visible spectrum. I'm really looking forward to showing you some of those images, but it's rooted in science. For over 150 years, we've understood that living systems emit biophotons. Juicier research being conducted recently showing the biophotonic emissions from hands when we're healing. And again, we learn things when we look at the science, very important things. And we learn things from countless cases. So, this is an image from a full spectrum in the UK, a guy called Nigel, who's seen so many Kirlian handprints that he can actually speak to someone and the issues that are addressed in this overlay by how energy is formed, say, at the fingertips. And you can see, say, in the creative, just under our images there, that finger's not coming through very clearly. So he could have a conversation with someone at that level. And this is 1940 technology. So, of course, we can move forward to, it's a very grainy, pixelated image of our Biofield Viewer image, but you can see in 3D now and live, actually it's a video process, the actual meridians, that you can see the sort of red peaks, the sort of mountain range running down at least two of the fingers there. That's significant to anyone who practices any kind of meridian therapies.
Well, what does that tell you, Thornton, what we're seeing
in
this individual?
Well, I mean, say, for example, the large intestine meridian is congested. So there may be a couple of acupuncture points that could be stimulated. And these points, of course, connect with the Mama points in Vedic sciences. So although the world's all kind of thinks traditional healing has its individual roots, we've got a real commonality. And if we dip into all these different resources, we get a really clear understanding. And then adding the layers of technology, this is an image of a finger, and you can actually see the acupuncture point illuminated. So imagine, people are saying acupuncture is a non-scientific process because the meridians don't exist, the acupuncture points don't exist. You can actually, in a class of acupuncture students, use this Russian device, illuminate, sort of energize the person, and all the points illuminate. So it's it's kind of a much better understanding of what we're dealing with by exposure to the science. I don't know why my slideshow is misbehaving, but Joey Jones, if people dare, please reference him. He showed that by stimulating meridian points, the functional MRIs will show up a reaction in the visual cortex in microseconds. It takes a quarter of a second on the left here to shine a light in the eye and stimulate the visual cortex, but from the vision point on the foot 2 meters away, it happens in microseconds. So this means that the meridian system is a real system. and it's more like a fiber optic superhighway broadband than the nervous system, which is more like the old-fashioned kind of copper wires and switches that we're used to. And the real breakthroughs come through now when scientists can get access to the real high-tech technology and do things like inject the right dye. You can see Dupuy is the dye, I think, in this one, into an acupuncture point, and actually the whole meridian is illuminated. And there's a number of scientists and a number of researchers who've shown this. So the scale of it is that's a capillary, and the tiny little strand, we've had to draw it out just to show how tiny this strand is. And to me, that's a spider's web of filaments that we call it the premovascular system, because it goes through all the organs and all the other capillaries and all the other vessels. It was developed first in the embryo. And so, you know, we've spoken about 72,000 nadis, and now, a bit like discovery of this organ, we're now talking about a physical network of actual vessels, as I said, like fiber optics. You can see one there, sorry, rather a gruesome picture, but it really is like fiber optic. And we've never discovered it before because we didn't want to. But as I said, get access to decent technology and you end up with something that's, you know, black and white, an electron microscope image of a meridian. You know, it changes things and it allows the integration of medicine to happen at a more confident pace.
So that's what we're seeing in that last slide. That was an actual meridian. Is that the
yeah.
It's an actual physical thing.
Strand, yeah, like a spider's web. And in fact, traumas develop, catch into our web like flies. And if we don't digest them, they kind of just hang there and mummify, and they affect the vibrational signature and receiving of that person. So if you've got a whole load of little bits hanging about, you know, it's good to digest them, even though it may be 30 years on. New modalities, that's what they're doing.
Well, that actually affirms a lot of what I've written about, and a lot of my work is with trauma and this stuff that just gets lodged energetically in the body and gets you sick. It gets you depressed. It gets you dissociated. It gets, you know, physical ailments and illnesses develop out of it. And it has to be, just as you said, it has to be processed. And the energy has to be released. So you're back in balance. And
well, I mean, Eileen McCusick is a very good example of a developer of a newer modality. Hers is called Biofield tuning, and they work with tuning forks. And because they've got a physical kind of, like the Egyptians had the ankh to actually measure the subtle energy, they can feel everything and also hear everything, and you can hear everything. So it's very interactive. But they have, you know, reaffirmed that, let's say, the outer field which you come into is birth, and then every ring of the tree is like a year. So depending on how old you are, you've got this field of potential traumas hanging in those rings, or captured in those rings, frozen in those rings. And, you know, if it's really, you know, a traumatic life, you know, you can feel it, you can hear it, and
well, yeah, if you walk into a room with somebody who's extremely depressed, I mean, the energy just, I mean, you just feel it immediately. There's a heaviness. It's almost, it's like walking through water or something. And I was going to ask you, have you looked at people using this technology in different states, say, you know, a yogi who's in a kind of a non-dual state of awareness, or a musician's in a flow state, or an athlete, you know, who's right in the zone?
Totally. I mean, I really need to show you just a couple more slides to get you to that piece of our technology where you can see what we're talking about, because the stuff up till now is the only sort of anatomical features of the biofield, and the chakras are a huge part of that. I'll zip through some of these. Valerie Hunt, a great hero of mine, developed technology which allowed us, you know, in old school PCs to actually measure the chakras, see the biofield. One of the first researchers out of UCLA to do that. This was in the 70s, Valerie Hunt, and she's got a great movie you can watch called The Human Aura or something. And I guess there's clips of it on YouTube which allow, you know, people to see the kind of more clairvoyant type of energy. And it was limited. It was in the analog equipment phase, and I remember her telling me she wasn't able to recreate the system. But as you can see, these pictures are quite interesting. No use for research. When we want to do research, we go to devices like the BioWell, which, although limited because they use old 1940 Keelian technology, a lot of research has been done to support them. You can see we're looking at symmetry, area, and the little picture on the left, my left, your left, is of a fingertip. So you build up composite. And there's a lot of detail and a lot of data. So we do research with this device here. You can see before subtle energy improves. There's some really amazing technology out there now. This is a converted seismograph that we're using with the Rishi, with the Kundalini experiment, measuring his chakras. And we actually have a channel on each chakra. So here you can see very low activity in the brow and crown, which is what we asked for. And then just said, turn on the chakras, and brow chakra just comes zooming out. So if you can do that sort of thing at will, then you can start mapping, you know, the subtle energy and the spiritual well-being of someone. And I guess the ability to pop in and out of these dimensions at will is an important part of the spiritual journey. And we get a composite image, which allows us to do the kind of research calibrated with other devices that can endorse the type of thing I was talking about. You know, the biofield is measured from the perspective of just the heart, can be seen as a kind of a toroid. You know, this toroid is something, you know, yin yang, as in Oriental, yin yang is a toroid sort of tattoo. It's stuck in 2D, but it's actually trying to show you this. And I hope people consider what I'm saying there, because it's one of the big issues with subtle energies. We've been stuck in these kind of cartouches and different flattened dimensions, and the information is actually much more interdimensional than that. And, you know, there's so much stuff about the chakras. You know, our technology shows them in real time. We can see their functionality. It's limited by the computer screen. It's a flat screen, but we've got so many wonderful resources with the Oriental perspective, modern people like Barbara and Brennan, and these types of really modern modalities that actually map. See, this says sadness, grief, and loss. This one says sadness, grief, and loss. They're both saying the same thing, but two completely different schools of healing. And it's scientists like me that actually can test whether that's true or not. And if 30 different groups all say the same thing, then it's, you know, it's exciting that they endorse each other. Our biofield imaging is done in the visible spectrum, but it just images the interference patterns between a standard light source and an individual. So I can speak to this guy and say, you've got beautiful symmetry, some issues with the throat. Is this a tooth that's, you know, have you got an abscess in that tooth? Are you dyeing your hair? I don't recommend that particular brand because it's affecting your subtle crown energy. Your third eye is wonderful. Living in the city, sinuses is showing through. But always we're talking about the energy associated with the systems of the body, because this is a biofield image. I can speak it to the chakras and meridians, emotional states, and I never need to actually mention the physical well-being. You know, let's leave that to the, you know, general practitioner. But everybody's different, so we do a full composite set of images. In different filters, if you like. So this guy, for example, is showing that sadness and grief that showed up in a couple of those diagrams. So I would question this guy, and the chances are, yes, I've lost my father 3 months ago, and he's carrying this sadness front and back. And so when you've got this kind of tool, we can navigate right to the core issue. I call it opening a channel of trust, because if you're sitting with me and I've taken a set of your pictures, you're going to know that I know everything about you in about 3 minutes. And that saves a lot of bullshit, because I ask exactly the right questions, where you hurt, where you've got emotional traumas. I can tell how your relationship with your family is, everything from this set of images. And it's a phenomenal experience. And it's why so many people, dare I say, getting this equipment, from surgeons in New York to holistic practitioners in Australia. You know, it's a global phenomenon, because we've finally got something that people can use. And luckily, we've been able to make it affordable. Our programmer retired doing well, working for a British company that supported Apple getting 3D graphics. So he's a genius, basically. And I'm blessed that every year he spends a lot of his time perfecting our system. So I can say to someone, hey, gee, your solar plexus chakra is congested or shielded. You know, why are you shielding? Because it's taking a lot of energy doing that. It means you're not be able to speak your truth, and it's affecting your ability to, you know, be generous with your energy. So,
well, you know, this completely confirms psychodynamic psychology. You know, what you learn as a therapist and working with the energies and the blocks and all of this stuff. It's amazing.
Well, we work with any modality. We've just developed a tool, having 25 years and all the other tools that were available as a benchmark, and we've welcomed hundreds of modalities into our research center and said, hey, we've got these tools, can we see what you do looks like? And that's been very informative. So when I train people how to interpret the images, I got the experience of having done all these studies. So I actually feel very confident that when I'm speaking to someone's emotions or other more sensitive matters, that channel of trust is there, and it just carries the whole way through. And I know 3 months down the line, they're going to remember the experience with me or with their practitioner, and it's going to allow them to timeline and prioritize. Because, for example, if somebody like this fellow is not grounded, then other remedies you give him aren't going to work so effectively. So if I tell this guy, go out, stand barefoot in the grass for a week and then come back, anything else I give him will work much better. You know, and if you don't know that, because you don't get the whole body look that we see with this genuinely safe, full body holistic screening, you might not know that from an energetic perspective, you need to prioritize these different issues. So that
now, if you're an energetic healer and you're looking at this and you can interpret it, you just do an intervention like immediately and just start working with the block energy. Yeah,
it's live, so you can actually project someone's image onto them, and if they're lying on a table, you can actually project their own detail onto them, so you can brush and clear.
Right, and if you're working with them, then you can see live what's actually going on in the subtle energy of the bioenergy field.
And that's why the client's so confident, because they can look up on the mirror on the ceiling and see it balancing and improving. Or, you know, that's quite fancy. You can just do it on the wall. As long as everyone can see it without cricking their neck, it means that you can track the progress of your modality. You can improve things by a little bit of trial and error. Your clients get to see what you're doing, and they can get a timeline over a few months, what, you know, they look like when they came in, and it actually helps the biofeedback. I call it biofield back, you know, when you can see what's going on and you get to talk about it, it releases a lot of stuff. And by seeing it, it makes it very conscious. So then you're thinking about that little pink monkey on your back, and a week later, you've shaken the damn thing off.
Now, are you guys actually manufacturing the device that is taking these pictures, or
Biofield Viewer? Yes. Yeah, Biofield Viewer. I mean, the actual technology has been around for 25 years. A guy called Oldfield originally developed it, and both me and the programmer that developed Biofield Viewer originally worked with him. But, you know, we're not working together, and it's not our fault. We'd love to still be working with him, but this is our reality, and we were able to rewrite the program and perhaps not be stuck in the mud with what we had, and embrace technology. And now we feel we've got something that really can put things through the paces. Because if I just give you an image, how can you do research with it? Now that I've got tools like ImageJ, which is a free program, I can analyze any of these images and compare them statistically with other images later on taken, or other techniques. So it's kind of important now, and my job now is to encourage more and more people to do research. So that we've been in Jaipur recently, opening a new lab at a spiritual research cell in university, one of the top engineering colleges in Rajasthan. This image, by the way, is interesting. You've heard of the phantom leaf experiment, have you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is an image, not a brilliant image to see. This is a gentleman's torso, and we can actually see the stump of his arm. lost in an industrial accident, and quite a lot of trauma around the site of injury. But we can also see the phantom limb down to the elbow. And it's a unique picture, this, because like the phantom leaf experiment, and we've recreated that in the armed forces hospital.
So you remove the physical arm, but the subtle body,
especially with people who have phantom pain.
Yeah.
So he had phantom pain in his elbow, this guy.
That's something.
Anyway, a couple more pictures before you ask any more questions, and then I'll just get them out, because there's a few other dimensions, and I'll get these out the way, and then we can natter. This is a lady who was about to expire. She came specially to my workshop. She wanted us to see what was happening, and you can see this kind of portal opening up behind her crown chakra. It was a very wonderful moment for everybody there, but healing, as I said, we do it with videos. So if two healers come in, you see this white light around people, as they're able to then draw from the white light what the healer brings in. And so it gets to the stage where healthy people, I'm scanning a whole village, 500 people. You're on the left, you're fine. You're on the right, come back in an hour, I need to talk to you about something. And that way you can identify issues before they become an issue. Ambulance chasers say you've got an hour, a golden hour. Well, I'm talking about a golden year, where we can identify genuine, going to be a health issue, but we're going to deal with it energetically first. And we're confident because our machine, our technology shows things that we've never been able to see before. In 3D, our new 3D, we can see how the chakras really form this, like I was showing you the mountains on the fingers there. And because we have different filters, like the old-fashioned Kirlian, we can now make a video of just the subtle energy, the etheric body, we call that, around somebody. But this is a video, so you can imagine if you had a whole load of people doing a ceremony or something, how interesting this particular feature of our technology is. And blah, blah, blah. Wonderful correlation between, say, a reflexologist or a face reader or someone doing feet. We can scan the feet, and the reflexologist will corroborate the issues. It's just I'm going to get skimmed through. This is the slide I wanted to show you with the data being pulled out of an image from Image J, and I think just a couple more. This is brilliant. This is a picture or two pictures where this is in a mortuary where a young boy is no longer in his body and is actually zooming around the room. And with other technologies, we can see how, say this is with a bioilluminator. This lady, as I understand it, had a heart transplant from an African-American lady. It was later discovered. And when we turn on the bioilluminator, you can actually see both the African-American lady and the original lady in the mix, where with the bioilluminator, which is very interesting, torsion generator, you don't see that. So this type of thing, there's more spirits and entities, this child affected by an entity, in rare situations, but our technology can give insights into it. So a lot of spiritual communities and people who work with things like possessions work with our technology. It's kind of tried and tested now. But I mean, that's really what I wanted to say. So there you go. I do have a few more perspectives, but let's see. You said look to the future, and so I wanted to leave these last images.
Did you have a picture briefly of the device itself?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, that this is software. I mean, we use a light, any kind of a light. This is a nice LED light, it's about $80, and a webcam. Our Biofield Viewer is technically software. Of course it's software, because what we're doing is showing you what you can already see, but by accentuating the gradations of light intensity in a way that the eye has perhaps been trained away from, we see the subtleties. And that's why if a clairvoyant sits beside me and says, Thornton, I can see how it's a bit of a gingerbread man on the flat screen, but I like what you're doing. So in other words, it's not a machine, it's software, and we create an environment with a standardized light so that when someone comes back, they're in the same environment. But that environment can be taken to the mud hut village in the middle of Africa.
You know,
It runs on a...
I was going to say those 3D images reminded me of the Shroud of Turin. You know, whatever that is, you know, it certainly looks similar to that.
Well, anyhow, that's what we do. It's a brilliant evolution. I've spent, like I said, 25 years. John Catchpole, who's a programmer, was a schoolboy when he first developed it. And a little bit of history, I made a film with Arthur C. Clarke many years ago called The Colours of Infinity. And it alerted the global community, I guess, to the science behind chaos theory and mathematics. Arthur C. Clarke wrote a beautiful book, which he actually presented as a lecture to all the world's cosmonauts. Greg Sams, a friend of mine, and I decided to produce the film with some other friends, and we drew in a lot of amazing programmers and so forth. And one of the people that was really a pioneer with fractal programming in the UK was this John Catchpole. He actually was a schoolboy writing software and making it available when nobody else even knew what the heck was going on. So that's the little history. And having taken thousands and thousands of images, one of our colleagues worked on a Nobel Prize winning team before they joined us, and the prize winner themselves were so grateful to their team, Rani was one of them, that he gave them an actual solid gold copy of his Nobel Prize for science. And so we had that kind of caliber, people giving a great amount of their time and energy to our research lab, often on very nominal salaries, because we all wanted to do this work. And that was an atlas of disease states where we track the trajectory of people's health through a lot of pre-symptomatic stages. So before you have any issue in the blood, any blood work would show up a disease, we see patterns like weather patterns in someone's field which show their tendencies. And if we avert them from those patterns, you could call that a thankless task. But on a community level and on a health budget level, you obviously want to have funds for geriatrics and pediatrics and accidents and emergencies, and less for dealing with all the chronic care. So that's what we're focusing on.
Wow. Javi, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I've got quite a few questions. I could speak to you for days, I think.
No worries.
So first thing, one thing that I always find, I always want to know how you feel about it. You know, all the people that we've interviewed who are doing similar work to you. Do you still encounter a lot of resistance from the scientific establishment? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there are other people in different categories, aren't there? If you're on Wikipedia, the chances are you've been completely trolled out of the page. I have experienced a lot of very vindictive trolling, and you kind of... something happens. It's a very humbling experience, and it knocks off any pointy edges you might have on you, but I think you come back stronger. So that's one aspect of your question. But no, I mean, I do come across resistance, and I tend to not avoid it, but I don't want to bang my head against a brick wall. I'm often asked to speak to a very skeptical crowd, and I have to use my words wisely. But I do and have obviously a huge amount of research, both done by myself and other colleagues around the world, to tap into. So when you can say, look at this, and then reference that, and it's, you know, it's PubMed or, you know, suitable peer review, then they've got to check it. They can't just, you know, blow strawberries. You know, that's not the environment we're working in anymore. It's an online environment. And, you know, if I sell more Biofield Viewers than CT scans are sold in the next 10 years, then that'll be the reality of the situation.
For example, another question I have, which is more in sound, for example, I've seen many times various frequencies that are associated to the ability to stimulate chakras, even colors sometimes, and the literature seems quite like there it's not easy to see why some people say this note might be it or this particular frequency might be it. Have you got an idea of why there is so much variety? Do they all work? Or
well, I have to say that ultimately, from my perspective, the whole subject of chakras is best served by an initiatory kind of journeying, and we get a traffic light interpretation in the first round, and when we really live and have the aha moments and really surf now, a lot of other things make more sense. I've done a lot of research with sound and seen how, sound and light to me are the waft and weave of healing. So, bring it on, whether it's music therapy or mantras, we've done a lot of research and we've seen how different chakras are affected. And it's the quality of sound and resonance, and it's the quality of the environment people live in that, governs their fields. People come in with the story of themselves, and sound is a brilliant way to address that story because it allows things to smooth out without any side effects, and even circumnavigating the body in terms of looking for a solution, which is brilliant.
And have you ever used the Biofield Viewer, for example, as a testing device for different interventions? Like it could be sound, or you said that you require like white LED lights for you to use it. I've heard, for example, that the blue spectrum of LED lights is not very good to be in for extended periods of time. I mean, have you ever used it?
Yeah, we don't scan people for very long, but that's a good point. I mean, in fact, we have protocols which are designed and then put before ethics committees, and generally our studies are very low risk. I mean, people have to undress to a certain degree, and that is more of an issue for our ethics committee than the fact that we're doing anything to them. But we've done studies with sound, and we've seen incredible results. So, and I will do more. Yes, we use Biofield Viewer to do sound research, and I think it's one of the best tools to do research with because you can see what's happening. If you've got other tools where you can see what's happening, then use them too.
We have to continue this conversation. It would be
sounds
really
like
brilliant what we're doing. Absolutely.
Diagnostic tool, real time and amazing potential.
And we can do it. We can do it on Skype. So because the software's got better and better over the last 3 evolutions, now I can say with you both and put you both on Biofield Viewer. So if you're doing something or something, anything's happening, we can observe it. It means it's very accessible. But I like the fact that, say, for example, if you filled up a videotape with cases, and I can process that for you afterwards because all the information is captured on the tape. And in the future, maybe
Brilliant.
I'll be able to do a transplant, an energy transplant from a child in a video, a kid's video on their healthy kidneys and paste it over to them now when their kidneys are malfunctioning. So, energy wet medicine is the way, and technology helps us show it after 100 years of industrial revolution that brought us biochemical medicine, and we had to wait for really sensitive tools to be able to show the other side of the coin.
Thornton, let me see if I just got what you said. You said if you could take a picture of somebody's healthy kidneys and then they get sick, you can take that energetic imprint of the healthy kidneys and help them to heal in the moment from their illness?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to be the best way to do it because it's a hologram of that space rather than just a blood sample or a homeopathic something. Yeah, that's the way forward. I think we already do it with our minds when we're master and mystery healers, definitely. But precision transplant means I think we'll have a lot less rejection of organs as well. You see, if I could transplant energy a week or two before someone's set for a heart transplant, and I blend the energy of the recipient and the donor, whatever the circumstances are. I don't want to, that sounds more like organ harvesting, but, however long you've got, if you can introduce a blended field, for example, there may not be the rejection and the requirement for a lifetime of, serious biochemistry.
And when in transplants, sometimes I've heard of stories in which a heart transplant, the recipient of the new organ can sometimes even access memories that don't belong to them. And
that's right. Well, that's what this picture is. I mean, this picture here is of a lady who's had a heart transplant, and now this completely different race person is in her space. We're looking at two people in one body because the recipient of a heart, they're both still in the picture. That's a phenomenon that is outside of the modern medical paradigm, and they don't check for it. And it's one of the problems with modern medicine is it rebuffs important stuff. And that's why, you know, that video, the shaman walking around a hospital, is such an incredible thing, because it's just, you know, it's just a whole, can be a lot of entities zooming around of people who've expired and haven't been dealt with.
Thornton, have you ever, has this technology ever been used to look at the energy of certain locations, places?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I do have a very strict training for that particular thing, because what we call the artifact is pronounced and profound when you're using it for that purpose. So, for example, if someone's using our equipment to scan someone's apartment, I don't just walk around with a video camera and process it afterwards. You actually want to carry a sort of like a wedding light, you know, around there with you, illuminating the room in every quadrant and map it out. And I actually still recommend scanning the occupant of a room. It's a little fiddly, and, you know, if you're, say, looking for a certain mineral in a space, I think those types of things could be programmed in, perhaps with telescopes or with satellites, telescopes. You actually find specific frequencies that are coming through on technology like ours. And one of the applications for our technology, apart from biofield imaging, the same software is used for seeing the trading on the markets, because it's still that non-linear programming. So we're just using it in a visual application, but it's because our programmer is there, he knows what else to use it for. We love contributing to this field, and we recognize it's delicate, and we encourage other universities and research groups to do it as well. It's very accessible. Our technology is about $3,000, so, you know, it's not a big deal for a practitioner to get it and whack it on their card and pay it off with 3 open days before the bill comes up. You know, that's what we want. We want people to take a punt, and obviously if they don't get on with it, we'll give them their money back. It's just a program, but it may be something that they actually enjoy for the rest of their lives. And I've got people who've taken thousands of images, and, you know, you could get them up here and they say, it's like turning the lights on in my practice. I could feel things before, I could sense things, but now we can all see it, so we don't have to talk so much shit.
Yeah. Does it need to be video, or you can work with pictures as well?
Anything, yeah, anything. Like, you can take a video of the Pope being shot and run it through the Biofield Viewer. You can get a photograph of your grandmother from a box and run it through the Biofield Viewer, definitely.
Or
image.
Hitler in his heyday, you know, spinning his spells and driving everybody to, you know, hysteria. That would be interesting.
Yeah, we like a uniform background, so neither of you would be particularly pretty with your bricks and statues. A nice white wall or something makes it very easy for me to see what's going on. Well, like I said, I can't... Sorry.
No, I said I'll have to go through my Hitler photograph collection and see if I can find you a good one.
Well, I mean, I'd rather talk about, you know, the people in front of me, and it's always a very individual personal experience, and I'm lucky that wherever I am in the world, people find me, and my equipment's very easy to get up and running. So I've had a number of people in today, and the 2 guys were absolutely shining. Both live in India, both been here for many, many years, brilliant people, and there's a few niggles with both the guys, and they're just like, bang, bang, bang. You know, I'm so confident that I can describe what they're experiencing by what I'm seeing, that they don't doubt me. And then when I say, do this, oil pull, you know, swish oil around your mouth, or swim, or whatever it is, it may be call your dad. And I say, call him every week for weeks and weeks. You know, you don't realize how upset he is that you're still this age and not married, or whatever it is. It can be really bizarre stuff that I talk about, because that's what their field is telling me in that moment. And of course I have to respect so many other things, and language is crucial. I will really avoid scaring someone. I want to talk about how we can optimize what they are, and how the brilliance that really is them is offset by some things that can be improved. Most of the people we see are walking wounded, you know, and that means they've got a big window to steer away from the rocks and, you know, chart open waters for a lifetime. That's what we want. Happy, healthy people.
So Thornton, if people purchase the technology, you can help them get started by interpreting the pictures that they send you and say, this is
That's exactly what I do. That's
okay.
exactly how I train people one-on-one, and I do it all day, every day. I'll have Chicago, I'll have Calcutta an hour after the other, but I will have a practitioner who's taken 20 pictures. They bought the system, they've set it up, and then I speak to them and they take 20 pictures of their clients, their family, whoever it is, and we talk through their images, and they know that person really well. So when they hear me tell them what they know about that person, it's kind of convincing. But I'm also showing them how I know that, because we're both looking at the picture, and I can say, you see this lack of symmetry, well, that's important. You see where that thickens out, that's significant. You see this is so much darker, and you see these colors here are so murky, or you see those color shifts speckled. These are all significant in an interpretation. And we call it a reading. I'm quite happy to say I'm doing something like a palm reading. This is not a medical diagnosis. This is not even a health checkup. I'm giving a reading of someone by their biofield at this moment. And then tomorrow, it'll be exactly the same if they haven't done anything. And so will it will be the next week, unless they suddenly get some cold or something comes into their field. And I've told maybe 1,000 people, oh, you've got a cold, haven't you? And they've said no. And I go, okay. And the next day they've called me and said, ha, 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 ha.
So you've been doing this for years, Thornton. So do you notice that when you're interpreting the imagery, you're also, or a person's there present with you, you can also feel it in your subtle energy field? I mean, are you feeling it in your heart and your gut, your solar plexus, and kind of, you know, not only is it a visual, intellectual interpretation, it's also
definitely, I mean, people can't believe what I say because I'm so in tune with them. But that is the healing experience. It's a triage between you, the person, the space you're holding, and source. If you've got a computer or any kind of a pendulum in between you, that's all it is, a device. The experience I'm having with my client is the fact that I can spend a very short amount of time scanning them and knowing everything, and then an equally short amount of time guiding them by their image in a way that they can relate to. So don't say anything presumptuous or out of place, because they're there with me at that moment. So there's no doubt, and then it's the stepping stone. You know, if you step on this stone solid, land it, then, you know, that one's there. But let's not rush it. You know, you aren't even breathing right now. So why don't you start breathing, conscious breathing for a week, count to 100 and see if you're still breathing. Do you know what I mean? And bring things into their focus, because we really are in a soup of kind of EMF goo. And some people just have got a meditative practice, or you use technology like yours and they ride through it. Other people are like, it's like they're covered in weights, and if you can show them, it may just be the thing they need to shake them off.
Yeah, and if you don't have a connection with the source, you're just going to have disease. You know, in whatever field you're in, whether you're, you know, I think political activists now, things are so broken, or in the field of medicine, you know, often these doctors are just not very good, but you find one that is good, and, you know, you can just feel wow, I'm with the healer, and all of a sudden the office visit changes, and you look out in the waiting room and it's crammed with people that want to see this doctor. So if you find, you know, so whether we're counselors,
well, that's a very linear experience, that, isn't it? When you see people one by one, I call it having a one-room hotel, and I encourage people to teach. You know, there's nothing you can do that somebody can't do to themselves. So if you just teach people how to do that, then you can have an unlimited number of people in the room, as long as they can have an individual experience. And ironically, I need to take people's pictures one after the other, but I can interpret 1,000 at once, because they could all be clutching their image that they may have taken in the back, and we can all talk through their images as if they're looking at their own and I'm looking at theirs too. But I mean, obviously we need to embrace our passion, and my passion is I guess the healing world. Energy Medicine Exchange is one of the organizations that I helped create a few years ago, and we've got 40,000 members now. So I do feel inspired that we're sharing brilliant protocols from new modalities and old modalities with each other, and technologies like mine are helping people see things a bit more clearly, and so the skepticism's actually melting. It's more like dead man's shoes, you know, when those old breed of professors die off. I mean, I've had enough invitations to wonderful universities around the world, you know, from IIT in Chennai, which is, you've got to have 99% to get in. University of Paris has welcomed us to do this kind of work. So we're not on the outside anymore. It's just actually high caliber scientists need to step up to the plate and get on with it, and sort of set aside these sort of slight issues.
Well, Ken Wilber said one time, scientific progress happens one funeral at a time.
Yeah, so, exactly.
You know, I could see how we're gonna bother you. You're gonna hear from us some more, because I could see how this would be spectacular in developing the technology that we are. You know,
because it's very accessible.
We're using brain scans, we're using vibrational stuff, but the subtle energy thing, which is like a lot of what we do, but to be able to see it and replicate that with testing our old technology and as we create stuff would be extremely useful.
Great. Well, that's what we're here for. And I mean, you know, like I said, get a system and I'll train you all, and then you can just, you know, I think it helps people tweak their tools, especially with things like EMFs and, you know, optimization. You know, you can suddenly put an amplitude button on a device, because different people receive the same frequency nicely at different amplitudes depending on their individuality. And if they have a dial for amplitude, for example, they can have a much better experience. And you need to see that kind of thing, because you see maybe 5 big guys have a really nice experience out of it, but 4 smaller people don't. So maybe they need to turn the power down a bit. It's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's subtle. Hobby, do you have any like closing questions? We've been going quite a while now. This is wonderful. This is our first real official interview. We tried to do another one, but the internet gods were not cooperating that day, so we're going to have to redo it. So this is just a wonderful blast of very interesting, healing, fascinating information, and just experience.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. And, you know, like you've been saying, you know, we're now at the stage with this, you know, this is a paper published using Biofield Viewer and the type of brain mapping that you guys do, testing the effect of twin hearts meditation for a pranic healing research conference. A doctor in Missouri did this, Jeffrey Tarrant, really nice study. And what was fascinating, and this is important, is that the 10 novices improved enormously in just a week. And yet, obviously, the brilliant masters just plateaued at a very beautiful high level. But what it means is that if you start something, you know, like doing yoga or Tai Chi, you're going to have a very profound and important effect quickly. You don't have to wait 2 years before you can, and 2 weeks later, you'll already have a great.
Yeah, I could see how this could be extremely, extremely helpful dealing with depression or drug addiction. And I don't know if you've ever done any kind of scans of people who are suffering those particular diseases, but I imagine it would be pretty dramatic.
Well, I mean, the trouble is we don't differentiate between people who've got some kind of energetic weakness, which has allowed some kind of what's the word to use in this case? Well, they're entities, attachments, let's say. And those people have a completely different set of requirements because you need to deal with those entities. You can't just give someone a medicine.
Right, well, and part of it is developing the protocols, and as the the technology advances and improves, and the practitioners like yourself, people reach a level of mastery. This stuff just gets it just gets
Well,
better and better.
the shaman in every community's been doing this, and whatever they're called in the Christian community that are licensed to exercise. Those guys obviously all have their own systems for thousands of years, and they're a very important bunch of people. They just operate anyway. I was in Switzerland recently and was very glad to hear that they have a kind of a hotline in the surgeries in a lot of Swiss hospitals, where if there's a lot of blood loss or if they think they're losing a patient, they put the word out to a network of healers, and they just start sending healing to the patient actually in the operating theatre at that moment. And they say, the surgeons love it, they say suddenly all the vital signs come up, and it's a big thing. So I love that
That's brilliant.
Sensible people working together, just we can do so much better.
Thornton, I've got a quickly last question, a practical one. I've heard you mention that the quality of the water that people drink is very important, for example, because of all of the pineal gland getting calcified. Is there any practical thing that you tend to find that helps keeping your energy strong? Any particular diet or practice, or I know we're all different. Is there anything that it tends to work?
I believe that we should all consider ourselves kind of karma yogis, which means that humbly, our work is our meditation, and with that regard, if we really are in tune with that, then our daily life is something really like a blessing. One of the things that I insist on, that sounds cheeky, but I've looked for in my own, looking at where I live, I like to drink my own well water. So my home has its own well. That's a really big deal to me. I drink well water from my own well, which is just there. In terms of simple things, I tell everyone, including every night, I put my mobile phone, which I reckon is a very important modern tool, onto airplane mode at night. I also always recommend getting a $10 timer for all your friends for Christmas, because if they put their Wi-Fi into a timer, it will switch off every night when you set it, and it'll come on every morning. So your children will all have a seamless experience online, but when everyone's actually asleep, the EMFs and the Wi-Fi signals will be reduced. And I know you get lots of Wi-Fi signals from all the neighbours, but the one in your own house obviously is a good one to switch off. Yeah. So there are lots of different tips that I would encourage people to embrace, and building biology and energy medicine, and there are lots of resources. I think sadly a lot of the public portals have been trolled. So if you look up anything on Wikipedia, it's horrific. Anything about acupuncture or healing or anything, it's all just horrific what they're writing, and that shouldn't be like that. So we realize we don't have a level playing field, but I also recognize in my own initiation over the years that it isn't a bad idea for things to come at you as you can digest them and as you can assimilate them and as perhaps you use them wisely. So I like the fact that the navigation still exists, and it isn't just there, Grey's Anatomy of the human biofield. I mean, people are producing stuff. I love it. I personally like to talk people through the experience as I was taught through by my mentors. It's just the way we work. And then those little pearls of wisdom, where they're going to land.
That's right. Our little seeds of wisdom, how they'll grow, huh?
I can relate to what you said, because my dad is a medical doctor. He's a traditional medical doctor, and my partner is an acupuncturist now. So I see loads of people coming to this place where I am now, looking for solutions because they don't find them in the traditional medical system here. And if they're open enough to try, and some do because they come to yoga. She's a yoga teacher as well. They get all sorts of things getting better in no time, and they might have been with a problem for years and years. When I told my dad a few weeks back that I was treating my sciatic pain with acupuncture, he just laughed and said, "That doesn't work," And I'm like, yeah. Chinese people have been kneeling themselves for 2,000 years because they don't have anything better to do, And it's funny, but in places like Spain, for example, I don't know how it is in England or the States so much. The mainstream scientific views are still really, really, against all these things.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I do feel blessed. It was a bit of a wangle, and all the credit goes to two amazing ladies, Kimberly Shipke, my partner, and Eileen McCusick, who I mentioned earlier, because we were invited to write a chapter for a new medical school book for a university in Chicago. So once students can read this stuff in their own books, I think we are going to have a shift. Otherwise, a few flippant remarks from certain corners that area of research isn't worth investigating. I mentioned I was lecturing in Paris, and one of the lecturers I was speaking with was from Manchester University, Manchester, and he told me that a colleague of his had been sacked because he wanted to do research into the chakras. So,
wow. The medical standard medicine has some real issues going on right now. And over here in the United States, there's been a huge opioid epidemic, especially in the Northeast. And I think they say like 65% of all the addicts became addicted to drugs prescribed by doctors, opioids. And then after they couldn't play that game anymore, they go get heroin. It just shows gross ignorance.
My first experience of that was I was lecturing quite a lot in the Caribbean at these medical conferences, and I would see the plane loads of retirees coming back through this airport, and they were all shaking. They all, and from my perspective, it wasn't that they just had Parkinson's. They'd clearly they were toxic. They were over-medicated. They had 40 years of medication, and they were all showing it in this accumulation. They test drugs for individual application, but everybody's actually on a cocktail, and that's
exactly right. If nobody blows up, they're happy. Yeah. There's really no studies what happens when you use the stuff in combination with all these other substances. It's pretty scary.
Well, I'm either going to have to plug my main cable in, or you're going to have to send me off into the netherworld as a already heavily overextended discussion.
No, this has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Thornton. Really, really inspiring. And you got us going for a new season. And we're going to be in touch, okay? There's things that I think we can collaborate, and not only getting your, letting more people know about your work, but things that with what we're doing, it would just dovetail.
Brilliant. Well, I'm all here, and we're very, we're here to play and share, and all the material we've ever created, we share. There's not a single file that we don't share. We don't even have any kind of patents. We believe that our programming is so crisp that, just let everyone catch up with us every waking day. We're just on it.
Well, all right. Well, hey, thank you so much. And
thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
God bless you guys.
God bless you.
Speak soon.